Why is it that robots are able to dance and do backflips, but they're not able to serve you a cup of coffee? For that matter, why don't we see robots in our daily lives? If they're so agile, why are they being put to use? To answer that question, we first need to understand the recent history of robotics. All robots principally consist of two things: hardware and software. You have a body, and you have the mind that controls it. Robotics companies sometimes focus on just one of these, and sometimes they do both. In recent years, there's been a great deal of innovation on both sides of this equation. Even if you can build a robot with human like dexterity, how is it that you give it the ability to understand and interact with the world? The thing to understand is that robots like Atlas or Tesla's robot don't have an innate mental model of the world and how to interact with it. That would require both understanding its own body in a physical way and understanding the world in a physical way. We need something that couples the concepts and its reasoning to the physical world. Many of the impressive demonstrations that you see on the internet really deploy a limited amount of intelligence. It's tempting to think that with the advanced models we have at our disposal, like GPT and Gemini, that we should be able to just plug them in and get something that understands the world in an intelligent way. While those models can mix images and language inputs to perform reasoning, we still need something to bridge the gap between concepts like make a cup of coffee and the physical actions in the real world. Describing how to make a cup of coffee is actually very different from physically making one. Many companies are working on this problem and from different angles. New concepts and approaches are being developed to bridge this gap. The goal of all this effort is a robotics revolution, one that is starting to unfold. But before we get to how, let's start with why. Why build robots at all? First, a point of skepticism. We have a biological need to socialize. We like to see other people. We like to talk to them. If we swapped out your barista for a robot, what would we lose? What about the human-human connection? The degree to which we accept interacting with robots is likely to vary situation to situation. In an interesting 2025 paper, OpenAI published this graph showing a breakdown of the type of conversations that people have with ChatGPT. The interesting part of this is that from 2024 to 2025, the share of people conducting chats of expression as opposed to asking GPT to do some task or answer some question grew from 8% to 13.8%. This means that millions of people are using ChatGPT to discuss how they're feeling or to work through some personal development or just have a chat. And with the odd exception, I'm going to assume most people that are doing this don't really think that GPT-5 is conscious. Now, this is not to say that ChatGPT is a replacement for human interaction or that it can cure loneliness. But I do think it implies that it's possible to interact with these AI models in a way that people find emotionally acceptable. So perhaps you don't need to believe that your local barista is conscious in order to laugh at their joke or appreciate the way that they treat you. Let's dive into some of the incentives that a company might have for adopting robots in the service industry. The economic drive behind this is pretty straightforward. We can assume most people don't prefer that their coffee is made by a robot. As long as that they get it and it's how they wanted it, they're fine. If you ran a coffee chain, you would be motivated to adopt robotics into your workforce. If your competitor can serve the same number of customers, but with 90% fewer employees, you're not going to be able to beat them on price. Now, Obviously, this has implications about employment, and there's growing contention over that. I don't have the answer to that problem. However, I think we will not make the situation better for ourselves if we deny that this change is coming. It's better to be prepared and acknowledge the challenges that we have in front of us. Before I dive further into the posed risks, I want to talk about how robotics could be a very good thing and solve a real human problem we have right now. We are getting older. As higher percentages of the population become educated, the fertility rate decreases. This is true regardless of country and culture. As populations age and elderly people leave the workforce, we need younger people to enter the workforce to replace them. To have a stable population, you need about 2.1 children per woman. This means that the average age of countries with fertility rates lower than this is getting older. In South Korea, this has become an especially stark problem. Their fertility rate is now below 0.72, and it has consistently fallen below expectations. This means that in the next 35 years, South Korea is going to lose half of their working age population. That is 18 million workers. All the while, the elderly population grows, which needs a working population to support it directly through healthcare workers and indirectly through taxation. You might ask, well, that's just one country. How about the rest of the world? With a fertility rate at 1.6, the United States, in this respect, is an outlier from other high-income countries. However, it's still lower than the required 2.1. As of 2023, the world fertility rate is hovering at just above 2.2. So this is truly a global problem. Now, obviously, we want people to better their lives how they see fit, to get educated, and to move out of poverty. But this is a real practical problem we have on our hands. And this is one way that robotics might be able to help us. And we might even prefer it. Consider how you would want to be treated when you're too old to fully take care of yourself. In the United States, elder care is a crisis of its own. Many care facilities do not have the adequate staffing or resources to give their residents proper care. But perhaps you will be lucky, and you will be able to live with your family or a family member when you are old. The reality is, taking care of you will be a heavy toll on your family. Even if they are happy to do it, would you really prefer to burden them over, say, a robot? Time with your family could be focused on enjoying each other's company rather than the burden of care. Perhaps robots could preserve our dignity when our bodies fail us. They don't stop taking care of you because they're burnt out or too tired. They can care for you and for your home so that you and your family can do what matters most in your final years. At least, that is the vision of several companies. 1X is one of the companies that is targeting the in-home care market. Their robot, Neo, is set to launch in 2026. Neo is meant to help you tidy up and do laundry and other chores involved in home care. It's increasingly common for both parents to work to support children. Despite that, the burden of taking care of a home has not gone away. In fact, this is one of the things that's attributed to decreased fertility rates in high-income countries. It's a tough decision for a lot of people to choose between maintaining a career and raising children. And often they choose not to have children because of this. Perhaps, with some degree of irony, the adoption of robots, in this case, would actually be pro-human. But hold on a minute. Let's back up. How is it that I'm supposed to afford a robot assistant in my home if robots are putting me out of a job? That is a fair question, and I don't think that there's an easy answer. For sure, people have argued for things like universal basic income, and perhaps that is the direction that things will go. I think that there is a growing sense that the application of robots in place of traditional human labor is an actively misanthropic force. While the risks are there, I think it's a trap to argue against the development of technology. Instead, we should acknowledge the challenges we will be confronted with and try to make the future desirable. The alternative is a future that we blindly stumble into. With that said, I want to highlight the economic pressure to adopt robotics. Let's start with a few obvious things. Robots run on electricity, and that electricity is cheap. They don't need sleep, they're diligent, reliable, they run 24/7, and don't cost more to run at night. In fact, electricity is cheaper at night, where their human counterparts are entitled to increased pay. Where robots are employed today, they carry an enormous cost advantage. Figure is another company building humanoid robots. They describe these economic forces in their master plan. The $42 trillion in GDP generated by human labor is their potential market. In a one-to-one replacement, human to robot, this makes robotics the single largest industry ever by a long shot. As crazy as this seems, I think they're underestimating the demand by a very large degree. Let me explain my reasoning. Consider a hypothetical construction company called Tom's Robot Company, which employs 30 human-level robot laborers. Tom's company is one of several firms which are requested to bid on a new apartment development. Every day that goes by prior to the apartments being filled, the property management is losing money on overhead and on opportunity cost on unfilled apartments. There is a real pressure to go as fast as possible and get tenants. When all the bids are finalized, Tom's company loses because while they were the cheapest, the other companies were able to guarantee the project completed sooner, offsetting losses the property manager would have had for the longer lead time. In cases where robot labor capacity means faster completion, faster will win. Robot laborers don't scale like human laborers. Coordinating an increasing number of robots is not as challenging as coordinating an increasing number of people. And when you aren't using them, you don't need to spend money to keep them waiting. By contrast, when production is halted, you still have to pay human laborers to sit on their hands while the blockers are removed. That is not the case with robots. The operational expenditure is the electricity to run them. When they aren't working, they cost nothing. This tips the scales even further towards mass adoption of robotics. In our hypothetical example, why does Tom's construction company only employ 30 robots? Why shouldn't they put twice that amount or 10 times that amount in their workforce? The limit here is how many you can reasonably expect to utilize in order to pay them off. Whatever that number is, it's certainly in excess of the number of humans it takes to do that job. Following this line of reasoning to its conclusion, the 42 trillion US dollars that is produced by human labor today is going to be dwarfed by the productive capacity of robots. What that world looks like, I am not sure. But that's the direction that we're heading. So, where are the robots? It's only recently that companies have solved the major technical roadblocks. As nice as it is to build a robot body that can do backflips, what is the point if there's a human in the loop controlling? To understand where the technology is coming from, let's look at our opening example. Atlas cannot understand what you want if you talk to it, It has no concept of tasks or task completion. In order to get a robot to do a human-like task, you have to train it on that task. Historically, this has been the job of engineering teams. This training process involves giving a model many examples of a task done correctly, typically through the input of a human controller. This is a time-consuming process and requires a specialized engineer. That makes it not very accessible to most companies. So, while Atlas can perform backflips and jump between platforms, it does not know that you need a particular box or how to carry it until you train it to do so. This training process is slow. That is why companies need as much training data as possible from as many sources as possible. The AI models that they are building to reason about the world needs many examples of how the world works in different contexts. But what if you didn't need to record thousands of examples to build your training dataset? What if you could use the cutting edge video generation models to create the examples? Maybe then you could train a robot how to do a task simply by asking it to do that task. This is exactly what NVIDIA has developed a pipeline for. They are calling it Groot Dreams. Now, AI-generated videos can be used to train AI models how to interact with the world. Text prompts about the robot's environment are used to generate AI videos of the robot completing that task. This set of videos is then shown to the model in training, which then learns to complete the task. This cuts out the thousands of hours of human-generated data needed to train the models. This advancement is both a technical achievement and an accessibility achievement. In a world where controlling a robot is as simple as speaking to it or giving it a written set of objectives, businesses of all types can adopt and implement robots in their workforce. What once required a team of specialized engineers and technicians would now be done by any manager. But training data is not the only thing that stands in the way of the robot uprising. Robotics has difficult engineering challenges in its hardware. Historically, robot companies have been vertically integrated, meaning they had to both build the hardware and the software. This is beginning to change. Now that training data is more accessible than ever, research groups and startups can focus on building novel approaches to intelligence. Skilled AI produces an AI model that they describe as omni-brained. This is because the same model can control different embodiments. This is true for embodiments it's never seen before. They achieve this in part by using NVIDIA's simulation pipeline for generating synthetic video data. Skilled AI's model demonstrates a generalization of the physical control of a robot. You'll notice, though, that Skilled does not produce their own robots. The robots in their demos are built by a company called Unitree. Unitree is attacking the hardware side of the market very aggressively. In comparison to previous humanoids, which could cost more than $150,000 per unit, Unitree is selling its cheapest model for just under $6,000. Falling costs for these robots makes them more accessible to startups, researchers, and universities. The historical approach to building AI for robots has been something called a vision language action model. These models attempt to map language and vision inputs into action outputs. With the advent of modern reasoning models, researchers have started adding another layer of intelligence. In addition to the traditional vision language action model, companies like Google have built what they call embodied reasoning models. These models are similar to the AI agents that perform long tasks like software development, but they are oriented towards planning in the physical space. These embodied reasoning models can work with the vision language action model to drive the robot to complete complex tasks. This demonstration shows a robot utilizing such an architecture. When commanded to organize items into the correct bins, it reasons about how to do that and does so without prior training on that specific task. To summarize, there are risks associated with robotics replacing human labor, but they also come with significant potential upside. We need to address how to support an aging population. NVIDIA and Unitree are making robotics more accessible than ever by driving down the cost of hardware and training. Google and Skilled AI and others are innovating on the intelligence architecture. Figure and 1X are already trying to address the in-home market. So where does that leave us? For one, I don't think that we should deny technology. It will continue to improve and get further adoption. We need to start asking hard questions about what we want for ourselves. We should reflect on how robotics could be used to improve the quality of life for everyone. We should start asking ourselves how we want these robots to fit into public life. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to read a deeper dive into this topic or any future topics, go to the link in the description.